All right, welcome everybody to the November 16th, 2020 Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting. My name is Dwight Otwell. I'm the chair of the meeting tonight. And the first thing that we are going to do is going to do our introductions. So if we could just go around, I guess, I forget how we do this every time. We should go alphabetically. How quickly can we make that happen? Alphabetically by last name. So I guess that'd be Elizabeth.
I am Elizabeth Alley. I am on the policy committee.
And Kari?
Hi, I'm Kari Varsness, and I also serve on the policy committee.
And next up is Paul.
You're muted. You're still muted.
Moving along, I believe next will be, I forgot to take into account Hatchell. Barbara, I believe, is next.
Sorry, mute button problems. Barbara Godwin, micromobility coordinator for the city.
All right, and on to the H's, which will be Susan.
Hatchell, I am on the community outreach committee.
And Liz?
I am Liz Hester. I'm on the, what's the new name of the committee? The bike.
I believe that you are on the planning committee.
Planning, that's it. Sorry, I got my names confused.
That's right, we threw everybody for a loop. And Eric's up next.
I am Eric Lamb. I am the transportation planning manager for the city and your unwieldy tech support for the evening.
And then we are moving on to Mary.
Sorry, my husband was doing the ice machine. Mary Sal, Planning Committee.
And Pierre.
Pierre Tong, Planning Committee.
And Kelly.
Kelly Bubble, Outreach Committee.
Excellent. And I see that Nick has just jumped in, and he is the chair of the Outreach Committee. I don't know if he has his video and audio up yet. And I skipped Robert because I didn't see his face on the screen, so that is my bad. Robert, are you there to introduce yourself?
I think Eric has him muted.
No, he is no longer in the room.
Well, we hope to hear back from him soon, but I believe we're still at quorum, so we're going to go ahead. The first item on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes, and would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
I will second.
And Mr. Otwell, I believe we can now do this with a show of hands.
Excellent. So let's have all the ayes, please. Approve the minutes. And the nays. I believe that's unanimous. Moving right along, we will move into the public comment section. And again, I'm going to bring up the point that we will be having a separate business item to discuss the the Millburney and Harmont bike lanes. And so if you wish to speak about that issue, we will ask the public to hold off. This public comment section will be for any other outstanding issues that you'd like to bring before the BPAC. And so I guess we'll open the public comment section. And Mr. Lamb, do we have anybody signed up to speak today?
Not yet. If anyone would like to speak, if you'll please let me know in the chat window, and I can make you heard.
All right. Well, moving on from the public comments, and please do shout out if you have something, if you're listening. We're pretty flexible about allowing speakers. We will open the public comments for if you're here for the Hardemont and Millburney bike lane and parking issue. We will open the floor for comments from the public on that.
And as of right now, I have no one signed up for public comments.
Okay. Then I believe that will be our next order of business is the Hardemont and Millburney roads bike lane implementation. And I kind of thought that the public comments were going to be the point of this business item, or do we need to make a recommendation for council on this?
So Eric, I think can folks hear me this time?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. And Paul Black, city staff. Yeah, I think that we were just looking for direction to move forward. Ultimately, this item would go to council. We just wanted some additional feedback from BPAC before we took it to council. Again, the impetus for this was the completion on Hardemont of buffered bike lanes on the eastern half. This would connect those new bike lanes with the bike lanes on St. Albans. There's an existing striped shoulder that dates back about 5 or 6 years, and we're looking to convert that to a full bike lane so that it would match the section on the eastern end. For Mill Bernie, it's 2 pieces. It's the new bike lanes that were created as part of the traffic calming project, and then there's some legacy bike lanes on the eastern end of that allow parking, and we would simply be removing the parking that's allowed.
Is there anybody that has any discussion about this item? Ms. Sell?
What was that? I just heard something say inconceivable. Paul, what I'm going to say is not inconceivable. It's coming at you right now. I think that we should, I think it's important, based on a lot of feedback I've heard, that the Mill Bernie bike lanes do have that parking removed. I think that that's been a point of conversation for a long time period. So looping them in with Hardemont, I think if it's possible to separate those two and consider them separately, I would like to do that.
And Mr. Chair, you have we have one person from the public that has asked to speak on this, and if anyone else is in the attendees that would also like to speak, so please leave me a note in the chat. I can promote you later.
Please allow them to speak, and I'm going to keep a 3-minute timer for all the public comments for this. So I was unprepared. Give me just 1 second.
Okay. So let me know when you're ready. And Cody Stokes will be your first speaker when you are ready.
Excellent. All right, I believe I am ready to go. We can see the timer.
All right, Cody, you're good to go.
Hey, how's it going? Cody here. I live at 205 Lincoln Court in Raleigh, and I'm the president of Oaks and Spokes. And I just want to voice my support for the bike lanes on Mill Bernie and Hardemont. In really any corridors that we can connect and begin kind of flushing out, it's a great opportunity for the city to build more bike infrastructure through here, and also looking at the amount of available driveway parking that these corridors have. It just seems to make a really great candidate for that. I understand there are concerns of people who live around the area that some people find it very inconvenient to try to park in their driveway. And there's also a concern that comes up, I'm sure people in the neighborhood, is how do we have like lawn services, park on the side of the road and do the thing. How about delivery trucks, things like that? While it may just be a temporary issue from time to time, putting in non-protected bike lanes, which I understand is a requirement, is going to be something that you will continue to grapple with in these corridors. I saw it in my old neighborhood back in Northeast Raleigh as well, where even there were bike lanes, you couldn't get around the fact that a trailer pulling a track, like lawnmowers and stuff, would park in the bike lane. So we'd force you out of that and into the street. So for me as a rider who has encountered this many times, I hope there's an opportunity or design mock-ups that can be made to show what can be done by removing parking maybe on just one side of the road and just have an extra wide 2-lane bike lane on one side of the street, so you retain some of the parking so that neighbors and lawn services and all that stuff and delivery vehicles, they still have a safe place to park without forcing cyclists out of the buffered bike lanes. That's my main concern with these corridors, is that even if you put in buffered bike lanes, people parking aren't going to honor them. There's still, even if there are no parking signs, people are still going to park in them. So we need to find some kind of compromise to allow kind of all of us to live cohesively within these. And I'm curious to hear, what Paul and his team have come up with on different designs, and see what kind of the designs look like, if there are any design mock-ups available. But yeah, I support them all the way. Go bike lanes. We need to do all we can to save lives for people on bikes, and I'm all for it. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Has anybody else signed up to speak, Mr. Lamb?
No, sir, not at this time.
Time's up, Cody.
I'm all good.
All right, so I think that Mary had asked the question if it's possible to separate these two issues, or is this something that needs to be done together? Paul, I believe that you just said you're looking for direction, and you weren't to stake your reputation and your heart and soul on this. You were going to you basically see which way the wind blew on it, at least as far as the Hardeman was concerned, and it was not a major issue to split them up.
No, not a major issue to split them up. Again, each part of the city is unique, and we just brought them forward because they were similar, and they're going to go to council probably as a single item should they go together. But in terms of if we need to split them up, that's fine. I'm sort of look to it's the pleasure of the commission.
And from that standpoint, it's no issue from a parliamentary standpoint taking separate votes on each one. I will address, Cody asked the question about from a design perspective. In both cases, these are existing situations with existing edge line markings and some bike markings in the case of Milburnie. We're not proposing at this time to make any modifications to the current marking. If we did, we could look at coming back in the future and adding some buffering. Because these are residential conditions, one of the things that we have learned is that we cannot effectively go in and do bollards in these situations because of the presence of mailboxes on each side of the street. And so because of that, that becomes a limiting factor in our ability to apply bollards to make them separated facilities. But we do have the latitude to come back potentially and add buffers at a later date.
My personal feeling on this is that I think that we should vote to recommend the Milburnie change go through. I think we've heard mostly positive feedback for that, and I think it gets a lot more use as a bike corridor. With Hardemont, I'm not so sure. I'm on the fence on this one. I don't think that the situation on the ground will change much if we put in no parking signs, and so I'm inclined to just let that one be until something happens to Quail Hollow. That's where they're talking about the Green Street. And so if we could put this one on hold and ask Paul to reprioritize it in the new plan that he's doing, and it should stand in line where it deserves to stand in line. Ms. L?
I think my only input here is to Cody's point that it is dangerous for cyclists to have to weave in and out of traffic behind cars. And what are we going to be doing to enforce no parking if Milburnie does get marked in that respect? This has been something that has been used as a parking lane for a very long time. So as we are transitioning to better uses, better best practices for safety for those who bike, how are we enforcing that, number one? And number two, if we have an anticipation that people will continue to park in the Hardemont lanes, what type of facility treatments are we going to be proposing? I know Paul has been looking at some different mock-ups for like the neighborhood bikeways, amplified paint would be used in street, and some other traffic calming measures. Would we be treating Hardemont then as a neighborhood bikeway in this respect? Because I would like it to not just proceed forward with nothing. Like what's our ability to be agile and adapt as things come up and don't fit in that box? Can we propose, like Cody was asking for renderings, but I don't think we necessarily have something like that. But just curious what the ability is for Hardemont to adapt into maybe something that is traffic calm, but doesn't have a conventional bike lane.
So I can respond, Mr. Chair. So Hardemont had some four-way stop signs put in a few years back, and Originally on the traffic calming list, it had ranked, I think 7th overall in the city. Those stop signs brought the 85th percentile speed, which is the threshold that our program uses, down quite a bit. And now it ranks somewhere in the 70s or 80s. So getting additional treatment from the traffic calming program would probably be a long time coming. There are things we can do through the neighborhood bikeway program, but right now it's designated for conventional lanes in the plan. And our thinking with this was there are existing striped shoulders, and we can fit the bike lane markings on the pavement within the existing shoulder. We potentially could put buffers in. But our thinking was to just prohibit the parking and add the bike lane symbols in the short term. So there was nothing fancy proposed for Hardemont. Same is true on Milburnie. We're probably not messing with any of the new section. The old section, we're not proposing any changes, just removing that parking exception. Right now, we specifically have bike lanes with allowed parking in that small section on the east I think it's Pear Tree back to where the new project meets up with it.
And this would also address the new section, right? Because we have people parking rampantly in the new section as well.
Correct. And as far as enforcement, it's outside of the downtown, so our parking folks don't work out there. This would be Raleigh Police Department making those calls, which does sort of add a burden for them to do it. But I think if we knew when the signs go in, if we needed to have a campaign, we could work with the police captain out there to try and make that happen. And we ideally would do a lot more education, put out, they're not tickets, but if you keep parking here, you're going to get a ticket. We can make that happen.
I think I saw Vice Chair Alley with her hand up.
Thanks. I am open to understanding what some alternatives for kind of east-west travel in lieu of Hardemont might be. But I do have some heartburn, especially knowing about enforcement via RPD, that we would be ticketing people in East Raleigh and doing nothing in North Raleigh, especially considering how remarkably similar the land use patterns are. These are mid-century houses and newer. I think virtually all have driveways. They're both highly used roads. I don't know from a cyclist perspective, but certainly from a motorist perspective, they feel remarkably similar. So certainly want to be open to alternative ideas that can make all parties happy, but I think from an equity standpoint, it's hard for me to understand how I would vote differently on both of these.
So we could make it the same. I mean, again, it's just like if we get the complaints from the cyclists, but we would also be working with RPD out there. It's a different police district, but again, we just work with the police captain, and we would probably start with an education campaign first. We don't like handing tickets out if we don't have to.
And in that respect, Milburnie for a very long time has been a suboptimal bike lane. So it's not like a compromise didn't occur on that facility. It's just been there for 5 or 6 or 10 years. I don't know how long that paint's been on road. So it went forward with the version of what Hardemont I think would happen, right? People would probably still continue to park in it because we're a car-centric city. And then maybe in 5 or 6 years, if the cyclist community, just like they've been using Milburnie to get to the Greenway, so it became more of a pressure point and one that cyclists recognized as a pinch point. So maybe that would happen with Hardemont if some more folks started biking up there too. And in the interim, we would have a bike lane. I don't know. It's just it's not a good solution though, because we are we're putting people who bike in a dangerous situation because we're asking them to, go around these obstacles constantly.
So I'm pretty sure the obstacles will be there regardless of whether we put no parking signs in or not. Regardless of the parking, I know Hardemont right now, the bike lanes are full of leaves and will be for many months. I am happy to subvert my judgment on this. I don't have an argument against Vice Chair Alley's point. And so the only thing I could point to would be the amount of feedback, and that could easily be because they're just more engaged homeowners on Hardemont and more awareness of the political process. So
then it would make sense to move forward with the conventional bike lane as is, and then just treat it as a squeaky wheel and try to reconcile it over time. I
don't know whether the solution that's being proposed is that we move forward with no parking implementation on both corridors or neither corridors. What would you say to that, Elizabeth?
I'd suggest if we are going to call these bike lanes and we're going to show them on our maps, like Mary was pointing out, we should mark them for no parking and enforce them as such. But certainly, always in favor of education versus punitive, and understand the realities that people park in signed bike lanes and RPD is stretched thin, so the likelihood of getting a ticket is low. But it just from an equity standpoint, it's hard to see how you would treat them differently. So yeah, my suggestion would be I would support no parking signage on both of them, with a follow-up of perhaps looking for alternatives, if there are some, to Hardemont, if that seems like a priority. But I'm not in favor of bike lanes that you're allowed to park in. That's not a bike lane.
So I think there is a discussion to be had about which of these routes is more valuable as a bike lane, like currently and potentially. Potentially Hardemont could be, but that's a long, long way away. Green Streets might have been part of that moonshot that we're going to be like looking for quite a while before they get implemented. But right now we get a lot of people that talk about how Millburnie is a uncomfortable bike corridor. So I think that we should be equitable in how we treat the neighborhoods that need to have a bike lane, but I don't know that we need to treat them as both as having the same importance as bike lanes.
Well, I think Millburnie became important because it was marked as a bike lane, right? So like that started that forward momentum whenever that installation occurred. And then, you know what I mean? So I think it could be true the same for Hardemont. Just it would take that life cycle to get to that.
Does staff have any insight on why Hardemont is part of our bike system?
I mean, it's in the plan. And again, the only reason that it's coming in front of you was we had a resurfacing that allowed us to build it on the eastern side, which is mostly a multifamily coming into some office and commercial. So we don't have the same kind of frontage on the section that was done. But that was the trigger. And again, it's more really from staff perspective did that make the project right now that there's something to connect to? Before, when they originally went in as striped shoulders, there wasn't anything to connect to, so it wasn't as big of an issue. But again, if that's not a big enough thing to trigger doing this, we can step back. And I think, Mr. Chair, you talked about when it connects to Quail Hollow. We have a parallel facility on St. Albans that's slated to be a separated facility, probably next summer. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers. So we do have an outlet for that, but it does not connect to Quail Hollow, which will become a major north-south route for the area. So theoretically, this could wait until Quail Hollow happens, and that would get it to that it's ripe now. So I think if you want to think about it in those terms, is it ripe now because of the new project, yes or no? Maybe that's another way to look at that. Whereas Millburnie, the impetus was the same thing, only this was a little bit bigger of a project. We had the traffic calming, and we have already done the parking prohibition on the Hardemont section. It happened to be ready when all the other resurfacings went. We had not done that with the traffic calming project. It wasn't quite ready when we went to council. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Well, I can't argue that Hardemont is an unimportant bike route because it's one of the ones I rely on. Would anybody want to make an amendment or argue me against making a motion to recommend removal of parking for both these corridors? Right. Well, I move that we recommend to staff and council that they adopt no parking policies for the Hardemont and the Millburnie bike lane implementations.
Second.
All in favor? Hands up, please, into the camera. And I believe that's everybody. Is there any nays? Another unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Was the wording good enough on that, guys?
You're on mute, Eric.
Unfortunately, Mr. Parrish bounced out and back in. Robert, I don't know if you can hear me, if you wanted to make your vote registered on this one or not.
And he's showing as muted. There it is.
Robert, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, sir. The motion was to restrict the parking on both Hardemont and on Mill Burney.
I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. I believe next up on the agenda we have presentations, and we still on for the Blue Ridge Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Improvement presentation?
Yes, sir. Give me 1 second to get organized here.
I've been looking forward to this one.
Hey, Eric, while you're pulling it up, this is Cody. Do you mind if I ask Dwight if he'd be okay if I left that quick comment?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to bring this up at the beginning. This conversation about parking in bike lanes triggered my memory. So Ridge Road from Wade Ave, heading away from town, there's a bike lane there, but there is parking allowed in the bike lane between certain hours. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that and if this is even the proper channel to communicate this, but what can we do about getting that surveyed and updating that signage on Ridge Road so that parking just flat out isn't allowed in the bike lane, and make that just a standard throughout the city?
So, Eric, I don't know, you've got more of the history on this. I know that we have an entire, it's a traffic schedule 26B in our traffic ordinance that talks about bike lanes that allow parking, and Ridge Road is not the only one. In fact, the small section of Mill Burney, that's the legacy part, was on that list. That's one of the pieces we're asking to be removed. I think some of the others, Anderson, Eric, what are some of the others?
St. Mary's, Crosslink, there's a couple others that we call the legacy bike lanes.
So we are chipping away with Mill Burney. Potentially, if council approves it, will be the first one to ever come off that list that I'm aware of. So we'll have a template. There will be, it's an awful lot of public outreach to make those things happen. And it'll be very labor intensive from a staff standpoint. But if that's something that we need to be working on, we need to get that in the work program for next year.
I think we should continue this discussion, perhaps. Who would be best to pick this up? Would any of the committee heads like to talk about legacy bike lanes?
I think it's either policy or planning, right? I guess it could be community outreach too.
Who wants to go door to door on Anderson Drive?
Yeah, and in terms of the labor, it probably is mostly outreach. I mean, there's not a lot of technical stuff that has to be done. It would be mostly outreach with the neighborhoods.
I think this is a real big equity concern as well, because the same arguments Vice Chair Alley made before still apply to these bike lanes. Why should they be treated differently? I mean, I understand legacy, and we wouldn't want to move precipitously, but I would like to consider it. Yes, Ms. Sell?
I think the only thing is if we're planning going door to door, if that would be the approach we would be taking, I think that we need to remember that transportation corridors are for folks that don't just live on the corridor. So I think that that's just a point of conversation as well.
I was being facetious. I apologize. I did not intend that anybody on the commission would need to do that. But if we want to ask staff to do that, then that's a really big ask. So I think we need to be intentional about that.
Just thinking about how we solicit this information will impact the results that we get.
Absolutely. Mr. Neptune, you following along? Would you be willing to take this on in committee?
Sorry, I had to find my unmute. Yes is the short answer. I don't want to, basically I'm on board. So yes. Thank you.
Okay. I'll follow up with you and we'll talk about your agenda later. Are we set to go with the?
I think so. Eric, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I am blabbering on. So we have Brian Roth-Rafi from our Engineering Services Design Construction Division, who is going to talk about the Blue Ridge Road project, and I can get his presentation up right now. Brian, can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. And you are live.
Is the presentation showing for you all?
It is not yet. It is rendering now. How about that? Nope. Nope. Sorry about that. That's on me. There we go. Can you see that now?
Yes.
All right, Brian, go ahead.
All right. First, everyone, my name is Brian Roth-Rafi. As Eric mentioned, I am the project manager with the City of Raleigh. I just wanted to first thank you guys for letting us come here today to present and update you with the final design of the Blue Ridge Road Bike and Pedestrian project. Next slide. City of Raleigh is the ones providing the project, but I just want to mention that our design consultant is Amor Thomas and Associates. Next slide, please. So a quick project background, as some of you might know, the project was actually identified as a priority in the Blue Ridge Road District Study. That study was completed back in 2012. This location that the project identified has very little or no pedestrian or bicyclist-friendly infrastructure currently. Overall, the project budget is a little less than $5.5 million. Our current estimates is at 6.1. I did want to mention the project, which is about 78% of the overall construction and right-of-way acquisition of the project. Next slide, please. So just a quick location. Obviously, Blue Ridge Road is very long, but really the intent of the project was to provide connectivity between two existing sets of infrastructure. To the south, we have a lot of things going on, the NC Fairgrounds, as well as the NC State Vet School. And then moving north, connect to the North Carolina Museum of Art, as well as the Reed Creek Trail. So real quick for the description, these three pictures here are kind of the existing conditions. As I mentioned earlier, there's not a whole lot of facilities out there. The top is the existing bridge that spans over Wade Avenue. There's very minimum shoulders on that bridge currently. We will be installing a brand new multi-use path bridge over Wade Avenue. And the two pictures to the bottom right are kind of just pictures on the west side of Blue Ridge Road. Right now I can kind of see a Raleigh Go stop, but however there's no facilities to go north or south along Blue Ridge Road. So we will be installing a 10-foot wide path up and down north and south of Blue Ridge Road. And then finally, we also have a protected intersection at Reed Creek Road, which I'll get into here in a little bit. Next slide. So I do want to point out that in addition to our project, there's a lot else going on along this corridor. There are two other DOT projects that are either actively going now or will be starting in the next year or so. So U2719 is the Wade Avenue improvements that are ongoing right now, as well as the U4437, which will actually connect to the south end of our project. That is a great separation of Blue Ridge Road and Hillsborough, a little way south at the railroad tracks. So there'll be a lot of work going on here in the next 3 to 4 years. So some of the project challenges we have, I just mentioned the NCDOT projects. There's a lot of coordination with them and trying to get all that project work completed in a similar time frame. Some other projects challenge we have is crossing the Wade Avenue entrance and exit ramps, as well as relocating an existing 16-inch water line that goes all the way under Wade Avenue, as well as deep power lines and telecommunication lines that go over Wade Avenue, where we will be installing our new multi-use path bridge. So real quick, this is a kind of typical section of the new multi-use path. We will be kind of moving in the curb and gutter along the west side of Blue Ridge Road in order to make room for a green space, and then the 10-foot wide path along the west side of Blue Ridge Road. So this might be a little hard to see, but I will walk through it. Right here is the south of the project. We'll be connecting to another NC DOT project. The project will continue north. We're on the southern side right now. North along the west side, again with that 10-foot multi-use path. In addition, one of the comments we received early on in the design phase was there is a Go Raleigh stop here that was not connected to anything, so we are adding a 6-foot wide sidewalk on the east side in order to connect to a crosswalk in order to get people to and from that bus stop. And on the right here is just a rendering of a multi-use path. So heading north, right here on the left, you'll see, heading north, the Wade Avenue, our multi-use path will span Wade Avenue. It will cross the westbound or eastbound Wade off ramp, as well as the westbound Wade on ramp. But it will span the Wade Avenue itself. And then on the right, as we cross over Blue Ridge Road, there will be added a pedestrian refuge island as you cross Blue Ridge Road. Once you cross Blue Ridge Road, we'll continue east on, and we will connect into existing facilities there at the North Carolina Museum of Art. The next slide shows a rendering of the proposed bridge. It says 10-foot wide. It will have lights and fencing. This was discussed with a lot of the community, as well as like PNC, as well as NC, or North Carolina University, as well as other participants in the design phase. And then on the north side of the job is the project, or the Reed Creek protected intersection. This is actually the very first intersection that we have designed in the state of North Carolina. So if you want to go to the next slide, one of the main improvements while being a protected intersection, this allows for both a individualized pedestrian and a cyclist crosswalks, so they are not combined in the same location. They each have their own designated path, so there's not intermingling of the two. This also has new raised medians to protect those spots where we cross. Eric, if you can go to the next slide. So, the conventional intersection on the left here, when vehicles are trying to turn right, it's kind of hard to see the cyclist or the pedestrian. With protected intersection, you can kind of see that in light gray, basically a new island. This helps the geometry of those vehicles to, one, slow down as they're making that right turn, and also gives them better visibility of anyone crossing the road. And then the next slide is just another rendering of the image. So you can kind of see at the corners there is a protected area that the cyclists and pedestrians can wait to cross, as well as the green showing the bike path, as well as the white showing the pedestrian path. This does operate in a counterclockwise movement. And then, yeah, this will all connect to the near the Reed Creek Trail. So the public meetings, our first public meeting was held back in February of 2020. And then our second meeting, due to COVID, became completely virtual. I believe it started in May, and the comment period ended in June. As well as we just presented to the city council meeting a couple Tuesdays ago on November 4th. So throughout the designs, throughout the public feedback, our two probably largest comments that we received was the safety concerns crossing Wade Avenue and Blue Ridge Road at the westbound way ramp intersection. So some of the things we did to make sure that this is safest for all users, we tightened the corner radius for the vehicles to reduce their turning speeds. We have new signal enhancements at both the Wade Avenue intersections. This includes lead pedestrian interval timings, as well as new advanced warning signs that alert drivers at these crosswalks. The other main comment we received was the bus stop connectivity that I briefly mentioned earlier. It was not initially as part of the scope, but we were adding a 6-foot sidewalk that will connect on the east side near the Ramada Inn driveway, and that will lead to a crosswalk to reach the new Blue Ridge Road multi-use path. And then next slide. So our current schedule, like I said, I mentioned, we've had our design plan public meetings. We are currently about 95% of the design is finished. We just presented to the city council. We are expecting to start right-of-way easement and acquisitions this winter, and we're hoping to advertise and start construction in the spring and summer of next year. The anticipated completion date is about 12 to 15 months. We're looking at a fall 22 completion to connect basically from Trinity Road from the south to Reed Creek in the north. Yeah, that's where we currently are right now, and that is what I had to present. I apologize for the stuttering, but please feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I didn't notice any stuttering. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think this is great.
Yeah, Terry?
I will say, since there don't appear to be any questions, I see some of our comments from a couple of years ago in the previous. Am I missing questions? It reflected in the adjustments you've made, and I really want to say thank you for that. It looks great. I think this is a tough section, and I think that this is going to be a really good facility.
Hey, Dwight, this is Kari. I had a question.
Sure.
Thanks, Brian. That was super helpful. I can't, I drive on Blue Ridge a lot, but I can't always remember where the sidewalks are and where they're not. So if I understand this presentation correctly, it will because the sidewalks seem to drop off right around Wade Avenue, if I recall. Like they're going up until like June, and then they sort of just drop off and are non-existent. And so if I understand this correctly, there will be continuous sidewalk and to some degree either multi-use path or a separate bike lane going from Lake Boone all the way to, I think it's Trinity. Is that correct? Well, either in some cases both sides of the road, and in other cases at least on one side of the road, correct?
So the City of Raleigh project starts basically at Trinity and heads north.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So right now, the existing facilities end about 300 feet north of Trinity. There's essentially nothing currently between Trinity to Wade Avenue. And then the only existing facility north of Wade Avenue currently is the new facilities that were added by the Museum of Art. that is right along the east side. So we're connecting basically from there down south to Trinity.
Okay.
And then the DOT project will pick up at Trinity and head south.
Okay. And I have a follow-up question on that. So, I mean, I know this is sort of outside of the scope, but I'm sort of just curious. What is DOT briefly planning on doing from Trinity to Hillsborough, and I guess at least to the railroad tracks and on Hillsborough? I mean, it is, I'm sure all of you guys know this, it is a disaster, in my opinion, in that whole stretch right around the fairgrounds. I mean, it's a disaster regardless, but anytime there's a flea market going on, which is every Saturday, or when the state fair is going on, it is so dangerous to be walking in the ditch to get to the state fair or get to the farmer's market, or you see people cut across Hillsborough Street. So anyway, what are the plans there briefly?
So I can address that really quickly. So you're absolutely right that 2 weeks out of the year, this area is the state fairgrounds is the largest pedestrian generator in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So we have been working with NCDOT on a suite of improvements around the fairgrounds as part of their project that is going to create a bridge or possibly a tunnel, the way the design works out, that is going to carry Blue Ridge Road underneath Hillsborough Street and underneath the railroad and underneath Barrel Road.
Okay.
So there'll be a series of bridges there. So as part of that, NCDOT is including wide sidewalks. I think we ended up with 16-foot wide sidewalks all throughout the corridor, and that'll go from Pylon Drive all the way up to Trinity Road.
Okay.
And that'll dovetail with this project. So we're if you saw the map that showed Brian's limits, their limits extend just past Trinity, and we're picking that up with the multi-use path and carrying that northward.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I believe I saw Miss Sell with her hand up.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this project. Just for quick clarification, Eric, your project will be done at the same time as this project, or eminent with it, or how does that work?
So we're actively coordinating now. In fact, we thought that we were going to be behind DOT's project. Now it looks like DOT has changed some of their construction phasing because it's a design build project. Their contract team has some latitude there. So now it looks like they'll be slightly behind us, but we are coordinating actively with them now.
Okay, cool. And then the other thing is, I know I brought up a blog post that Oaks and Spokes had put together. They attended a meeting probably almost a year ago now, and I'm pretty sure, Brian, that you guys have incorporated almost all these things, which is great, but I just wanted to high-level bullet a few of these things to make sure they're captured. And will y'all have any other public outreach or feedback, or is BPAC your guys' final step here before construction, I guess?
I mean, we will have a pre-construction public touch point, but as of right now, this is, for design, it's the design basically done.
Okay, yeah, just curious about that. Okay, for other stakeholders. So one question will the cyclists go with the protected intersection? They would just go with traffic. They wouldn't need to activate a signal in any capacity. They wouldn't have their own light signal. They would go with traffic signal. Do you know?
That is a very good question. I don't want to lead you, so I'm not sure exactly on
just
that.
Curious. The question specifically was if a signal needed to be activated, it would just be automatically occurring, correct?
That's right. The cyclist would proceed with the green light. We've not talked about the details of an LPI, leading pedestrian interval phasing with this, but that's a possibility.
Yeah, because some of these are pedestrian-facing questions too. So, how that would interact. And then, are there any plans to lower the speed limit along this corridor to reflect that more people will be in it?
There have been active discussions with the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance and NCDOT for some time about trying to lower the speed limit out here uniformly to 35 miles per hour.
And would that be done with this project, or would that be a different process?
That's a different process, and NCDOT has final say on that.
Gotcha. Okay, and then another question that came up was looking at some crosswalks and transit utilization. And Brian, I think this is the one that are you guys incorporating better crosswalks connection by that Ramada? Is that what you were saying?
Correct, yes.
Okay, because that one came up. I think that was it. So I'm really encouraged to see the enhanced crosswalk. When I was going to work every day, took a bus route that went along there, and there was a lot of activity there, and it really isn't very functional right now. So I'm glad to hear that you're partnering with transit on that. So thank you so much for this project. It's great.
And I didn't have my grid view on before, but now I do, and I can see Liz has a question.
Got unmute. Okay, sorry. And sorry if I missed this, but how will cyclists go from, say, the Art Museum crossing and Reedy Creek that's being enhanced to the pedestrian or the multi-use bridge? Is there, because there's a path currently along the sidewalk that just ends, and I'm guessing that's what's going to connect as it cross Blue Ridge Road? Is it?
So I believe the up, near, like as you mentioned, that cyclist path up around Reedy Creek. So that cyclist path kind of merges on the east side at the Museum of Art into the multi-use path, and that multi-use path will just continue south near Wade Avenue, cross Blue Ridge Road. Basically, it'll be a multi-use path from the Museum of Art down south.
Gotcha. I was just curious. It looks like on one of the things I think I was looking at it wrong. So I just wanted to, it looked like they were you'd have to cross Blue Ridge again. But I think that,
right.
I think I was.
You do. We ran out of money. And we originally were going to come all the way up from District Drive. What we've had to do to make it fit within the budget is as soon as you get across Wade Avenue, you then have to cross onto the Art Museum side, take advantage of that, and then you'll cross again when you get up to Reedy Creek. Our hope is that parcel on the west side will eventually get developed, and the development will take care of that missing link.
Gotcha. Is there thought about putting like a hawk signal there? I ride a lot on that stretch of road, and it's not my favorite thing to do, but I definitely do it because I'm the 1% of service. That section is sketchy.
Yeah, both crossings are at signalized intersections.
Okay, cool. That was really where I was going with that. Thanks. Also, I will say, since I ride on this road quite a bit, thanks. This is going to be great. I'm very excited to see. Just want to make sure there might be a cross, like if you're having to cross, that there's some way to stop the traffic.
And Ms. Hester, one of the things that we're anticipating is that there's going to be some fairly wide-scale redevelopment along the west side of the street. And as that takes place, we are talking about partnering with the state of North Carolina. We're having conversations about what that would look like. And our goal is to reciprocate what we have on the east side of the street with the Art Museum in some form or fashion on the west side.
Yeah, and as you think about just going up through that section of that, like you make that turn on that section of Reedy Creek before it connects to the Greenway, that like just another thing to flag if people are going to develop that corridor, it'd be nice to have some sort of path along that road. There's a decent median now, shoulder now, so it's not, but it does pick up the Reedy Creek Greenway that goes on into Umstead after you cross, I think it's Edwards Mill. So there's like some, anyway, this is exciting. Thanks.
I'll second what Liz said on the, where she's talking about. Because it is a little awkward. You come off the Greenway in the museum, you have this beautiful Greenway, and then all of a sudden you're riding on a road. And then I think it is right at Edwards Mill, there's this nice little bike path again until you get into Umstead to pick it up there. So anything that you guys can do to be thinking about that as there's development that occurs, that would be awesome.
Technically along Reedy Creek, there is a Greenway all the way down. It's on the south side between the Art Museum and Edwards Mill. Then you've got that tunnel that you can use to go under, and then it's on the other side going into Umstead.
Right, and I guess I'm talking about after you go through the tunnel and you're going towards the Art Museum, there's that one stretch of road that it's got really nice wide shoulders, so it feels fine to ride on. But if you're thinking about development that's going to go in that space, it would be nice to have a path that connected that to the Reedy Creek.
There is a path.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it probably looks like a glorified sidewalk, but the south side is actually a multi-use path all the way down, and we actually do have a development coming in at the corner of Edwards Mill and Reedy Creek. Again, though, at that particular spot, it's on the other side. They are just going to be building a sidewalk and making any upgrades to the piece of it that's on Edwards Mill. But we're kind of getting far afield for Brian. But
Yes,
yeah.
Brian. This is great. This is great. This is one of my favorite places to ride. So I'm very excited to have that connection, especially to Trinity, because that'll just be really nice.
And I think I saw Vice Chair Alley with her hand up a minute ago.
Just a brief comment about the multi-use path. I think this is a great project, and thank you for taking our comments into consideration. This is a question for Eric and Paul. These are, when we speak about redevelopment in this area and kind of matching what you see at the Art Museum, these are areas where that text change for the street sections would apply, right, eventually, on these roads?
In principle, yes. Now, not to get too much into the weeds, but there's an issue here in that most of the land that's out here is state-owned.
Yeah.
So the city of Raleigh, even if we had those standards in place, the city does not have the authority to exact improvements from the state of North Carolina. So we're talking about having some type of cooperative agreement with them to facilitate this. And so it's going to be something custom irrespective, but we don't have authority. Right now, the majority of that property is owned by or managed by Department of Health and Human Services. And so, and they're interested in active transportation and setting a good model for their employees. But at the end of the day, the city does not have the ability to require any improvements of any kind, irrespective of what our cross sections are.
Are they doing? I know they're rezoning that land. Would that be a conditional use rezoning? Maybe we could look at conditions there.
It doesn't have to be, but it could be.
Yeah, maybe that's a way to. I mean, cooperation without kind of legal enforcement. You know, you guys have a great relationship with them, which is wonderful. But when that gets to that kind of phase 2, might be worth considering. All right, sorry, I know that's far afield. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Yeah, if there's anything we can do for you to move it on, I don't think it sounds like you need our input at this point. So, Mr. Lamb, was there a resolution or anything you're looking for from us?
Traditionally, we do like to get the formal endorsement of the BPAC as we carry these projects forward. At least know that we're on the right path. I think this is Brian, we're at 65% with this project. Is that correct?
We are closer to 90.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I would like to make a motion that we put forward a approval of the project.
I will second that. All in favor? All right. Any opposed?
And Mr. Parrish, your camera is off. Can you confirm your vote, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I approve, and thanks for. I was trying to I can't find that raised hand. I thank him for answering the question of what's the projected completion. 90% completed sounds very good, but yes, I highly favor it. Sounds great. Even makes me want to drive near there. I mean, walk on those sidewalks.
We're on a roll. That's another unanimous approval. Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
and I believe next up on the agenda is the Six Forks Improvement Project. It's 7:06 now. Do you think, can we ask Chad, Mr. Cantrell, if he would be willing to let us take a 5-minute break so we could all stretch our legs real quick and come back at, let's make it 7:11?
Yes, sir. That's totally fine.
All right, and we'll just keep everything running and just nobody do anything stupid in front of the cameras. So we'll all stay logged in.
Chad Cantrell from our Engineering Services Design Construction Division. He's going to talk about the Six Forks project, and what's nice about putting these two back to back is that the Blue Ridge work that we're doing with the protected intersections, we're really considering that a pilot first foray. We're going to take our experience and lessons learned from that and pile them on the Six Forks project. So Chad's going to go through that with you. So if you'll give me 1 second to get the presentation up.
While you're doing that, I think I need to make a motion to recuse me.
I don't know if you could do that, but we
I'll
could
make
do
the
the motion.
motion.
I'm not sure if it's required at this. Yeah,
I can make the motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Ms. Hatchell. We'll see you in a minute.
Right.
There we go. Thank you for your patience. There we go. Chad, you're up.
All right, just a quick mic check. Can you hear me right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chad Cantrell. I am project manager, also in the roadway design and construction group, and I am here to present the Six Forks project. We are still fairly early on in our design process, and this is our first presentation to BPAC on this, at least on the design side. So, next slide. On this project, our consultant is our K&K, putting the plans together for us. If you are aware of the project, I'm sure you knew there was a corridor study that was prepared early on, and I am going to steal a quote from that real quick. But the goal of the design study was to determine the needs of the users and provide a framework to improve multimodal transportation that challenges the ideas about the appropriate balance between automobile travel and other forms of travel. Using that design study, that corridor study, will be the basis of basically the master plan for our project. And in that study, it did look at everything north of 440 up to Lynn Road, but our project in this phase is Rowan Street to Lynn Road with the alternative to review some improvements on Rowan Street itself. If you've driven on Six Forks, you know the roadway section is quite varied. We've got through lanes that turn into turn lanes, very inconsistent. The turn movements are unrestricted now. People can make left turns out of the properties. Dealing with narrow lanes. We do have sidewalks on both sides, but currently no bicycle accommodations. And there is a speed limit change at Millbrook Road, with everything south being 35 miles per hour and everything north being 45 miles an hour. And project purpose, again, for all of our projects, we want to improve the safety for all users, but also looking at improving mobility for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicular traffic. As part of this project, we will be providing a consistent 3 lanes north of Rowan Street in each direction of travel to improve roadway capacity, as well as upgrading our transit facilities and consolidating them. And one of the other goals would be to try to consolidate a lot of the overhead utilities onto one side where possible. So this is a cross-section here. This is a cross-section of our proposed project, where we have 6 travel lanes, 11 foot in width, so 3 each direction, 21-foot median. And something a little different on this project, instead of the 10-foot multi-use path that we've been designing on a lot of previous city projects, we will be having separated bike and pedestrian facilities on both sides of the road. So. And again, the bike lanes would be one direction. So similar to what I just said there, the facilities for both bike and pedestrian will be behind the curb. Bicycle lanes will be separated by about a 3-foot vegetative buffer. As you can see here, the picture is very dark, but there is a cyclist in there. And the width of the cycle lanes are such to provide one way of travel. And as Eric had mentioned before, each of our 9 signalized intersections will be protected intersections. And I think Brian expanded on a lot of the benefits of those. And again, similar to his presentation, the intent is to have smaller turn radiuses for pedestrian vehicles or for passenger vehicles to try to get them more perpendicular to the crossing. And again, we'll have that mountable island for the larger vehicles. And then all the facilities will be set back further from the travel lanes to improve visibility. We'll have storage queues for cyclists waiting to make the turns. And then I think one of the feedbacks we got from our last meeting with transportation folks was to make sure we accommodate all users, including the mom with the carriage, pull-behind carriage. So also part of this project is we will be consolidating existing transit stops, and they're highlighted here in blue on the map, and then also improving access to cross-transit routes and integration with bikeways. One other item on that would be improving or providing locations for our bike share project as well. This is the overall project schedule. Right now, we've had our pre-design public touch point. We're closing up comments on that and anticipate having maps in the second public touch point here in January, and then the final design in July, and hopefully going to advertisement in December 21 with construction complete by December 23. So Eric's keeping me moving here. So that's all I've got, and open to questions. And we're very early in the design process, so feedback now would be great.
This is Robert Parrish. I trust that there are going to be audible signals.
Yes, I think that's standard. I'd have to look to Eric on some of that as well. If I know we've been talking about leading was LPI, but audible, I imagine, is pretty standard nowadays.
Good.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the map and I didn't see who raised their hand first. I'm just going to go top to bottom on my screen, and we'll start with Vice Chair Alley.
Thanks. Can you tell me what is included in terms of landscaping, median, and especially thinking about street trees? Looks like you would have room either at back of curb, or if that's not possible, between the bike lane and the sidewalk?
We're still pretty early in the design process, and that would be something we may have to ask Susan a little later as we get into design here. But there are definitely some complications with having some larger trees within the median. We'll be dealing with NCDOT requirements as well as large water main infrastructure. If you're familiar with it, there's the large storage tank there on Six Forks, so a lot of big pipes in the ground.
Sure. I'm very familiar with this project. I was actually city staff when we worked on the conceptual master plan, and I'll say that the renderings that we used to get this concept moved forward had really lush landscaping in them. And so I think that was part of the selling point of the project, but I would also say I think they're pretty critical for bike ped infrastructure. I know we don't look at them necessarily as combined, but we need some human scale on this very large, very fast road. So strong advocate for this. Thank you.
Ms. Sell?
So my questions were along those lines as well. I know it's difficult to tell in some of these renderings. I'm curious, with the buffer in the middle, with the big trees, if there's ever the ability to take a few feet away from that and allocate it toward a buffer. My initial thoughts when I see the bike lane separated from the pedestrian facility is that I feel like it could be good to put them closer together because it would provide more points of access for pedestrians if that bike lane wasn't being used. As long as you clearly marked it, there's a lot of applications that have been used in other communities that I think could benefit both the pedestrian or bicyclists. And I also am concerned right now about how close that bike lane is to the street, and if it's going to be like right on the curb there, that could be a little bit intimidating for folks. And so I'm just, curious about how we could optimize both if we did potentially cluster those together, if that would provide enough room to put street trees on the buffer, on the curb there, that kind of stuff. And just if there could be abilities, and maybe maybe it wouldn't be a consistent cross section across the entire, project, but if it could allow for the best practice of having some shade for people to walk or bike, I think that could be really good. I think that this corridor will get a lot of pedestrian activity with the adjacent neighborhoods. So it could be nice to offer them a larger surface to walk onto if we clustered the two together. I don't know if like folks like Sally have thoughts on that. But my biggest thought is that with that bike facility, it felt real close to the curb. And if we're doing a grass buffer to get it, if we even have a foot or two of grass buffer before it goes to the curb, and we were doing a grass buffer in between the pedestrian and the bike facility, if we merge those together, could we get street trees and that kind of stuff?
Sure. And the intent was to have 3 feet of buffer between the curb and the bike lane, and then having a larger green space between the bikeway and the pedestrians for those plantings. And it also would serve as a location for consolidating some of our overhead utilities to get them further away from the street as well. Some of those utility poles and some of the, I think, the smaller street trees that would accommodate those kind of overhead utilities.
Ms. Barsness?
Hi, Chad, thanks for the presentation. I'm new to BPAC, or newish. I guess I have to eventually stop saying that. But I was not aware of this, and so this is actually really exciting to see something going on Blue Ridge, because I don't like driving on Blue Ridge for the exact reasons you discussed. I know you talked about the bike and ped, but I actually have a question on the road itself, because there are places where the road actually just, the lanes narrow significantly. So what are you actually doing to address the flow of traffic? And I couldn't tell if some of the, what it looked like on the renderings were going to be raised medians. What are you doing on the kind of the road side of things?
Sure. So right now we're proposing 11-foot wide lanes consistently through the corridor. Separated, there would be a 21-foot wide median that separates that facility. So that would help improve traffic flow through the area, as well as having that consistent 3 lanes in each direction.
Okay, so I'm confused. Where's all the space to do 6 lanes of traffic, a median, and all of this wonderful bike and pedestrian?
It is definitely threading the needle through a lot of places. This project will acquire quite a bit of right-of-way to make this happen. So
okay.
The overall cross-section width is 134 feet, centered on the existing center line. So it's going to be a lot.
Okay, and then follow up. Why did you stop the project at Rowan and not continue it all the way down to where all of the infrastructure is around North Hills with all of the crazy 50-foot towers? I'm exaggerating, but it seems like there's so much congestion right there that it would make sense. I mean, I know you said you ran out of money, but what's the plan then for that section right at North Hills where it seems to be chaotic to me?
Yeah, did you have some background on that, Eric? I know the bond package was specifically for Rowan to Lynn.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how we've got this project. The ultimate corridor plan is in 3 phases. And so from Rowan to Lynn was the first phase. That eliminates the bottleneck issue that we have today with 6 lanes going down to 4. And then there's a second phase that would address reworking some of the improvements between Rowan and I-40, pardon my dogs. And then the third phase would be across retrofitting the I-440 Beltline interchange.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Sell?
Quick follow-up. What will your process be for soliciting public comment now be?
We have moved to online forums for this. So everything is accessible through the project website. And we do put together presentations as well as videos and animations. And then there is a separate feedback website linked to the project website. So, and we will have 2 more of these touch points, the 25%, the 65%, and then those would be where we'd be having our feedback, and then we would move into the pre-construction touch point at that point.
So it's very likely you'll get public comment in addition to, like, maybe in the spring or in the summer of next year when COVID isn't as much of an issue, you might be able to do some in-person maybe.
Yeah, I think that would depend on how this all shakes out, right, for sure. And then we did get some feedback from our first public touch point, but it was very general at this point and mostly concerned about loss of left turns, which I think is common for any time we add a median to a project.
So I have a question about maintenance. Is there a maintenance plan for keeping the pedestrian and bicycle stuff clear? Currently, the biggest issue with walking up and down Six Forks are the condition of the sidewalks.
So per city code, adjacent property owners are required to keep sidewalks clear of debris. So that's an obligation that all property owners in Raleigh have from their sidewalks, and the same would go for the bike lanes as well.
Okay, could you, I guess I don't understand how bike lanes are considered in the city code. So they're not transportation lanes. It wouldn't be like a car lane. It's its own beast, subject to its own rules.
So this is actually new territory for us. I mean, and basically right now, folks are responsible for maintaining the public infrastructure, keeping it clear behind the curbs. So as we're moving bike lanes behind the curb, that is likely going to default to be that the adjacent property owners are also responsible for that infrastructure as well. And it falls in the same category as you're required to mow the public right of way that's adjacent to your frontage. So
even though this will still be a DOT road, right? So they're not going to have any maintenance obligations along this road?
That is correct. NCDOT does not maintain sidewalk within the city. Any sidewalks that we have are the city of Raleigh is required to maintain them, even on DOT maintained facilities.
Okay. So this is my backyard. I could talk about this project all day, but I won't. I would like to put in a request for as many, perhaps Vice Chair Alley will help me, the name of the term for the kind of crosswalks that we're looking for, ramp style, curbs, driveways.
You got it.
Excellent. We'd like to see the pedestrian and the bicycle path remain constant through as many intersections as possible.
Okay. Sorry, just taking notes there. Cool.
Yeah, perhaps the bike lanes and sidewalks come together at places where we know that their development's already happened and we have consolidated driveways to get them across on one ramp.
Yeah, and we are looking at that as the plans develop. I know specifically right now we're looking at crossing the driveway at the water tank site where we'll have to push them together just to minimize some of that slope back into the tank property.
Yeah, there's so much traffic on these roads that I think you have to be kind of aggressive pulling out of driveways and intersections. So protecting, especially now that you have cyclists behind the curb where people aren't used to looking for them, and you've got cyclists going one speed and pedestrians going another speed, it's going to be pretty critical that we slow those cars down. I know it's a challenge for volume for exiting off of Six Forks. You don't want rear ends, but to the extent possible, I think we should plan for this.
Can you talk a little bit about the pedestrian crossing at the Capitol Towers?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and apologize. Eric let me know that the slides were still on a timer from when we did the voiceover. So if we need to pull that back up, there is going to be a pedestrian crossing there at the Capitol Towers. It will be signalized.
Yeah, right now it's a stoplight. This is like my favorite crossing because everybody stops and you go right across. So what do you anticipate replacing it with?
Yeah, the same thing.
Another full stoplight, a controlled. Okay, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
I thought I saw something with a little like zigzag in there.
It is. It's just basically to handle the change or the different locations on each side. So,
how wide will that path be across the middle?
I'd have to double check. I know our sidewalk is 6 foot wide, so I would imagine we want to increase the width through there for any queuing of people in the median.
And will that be one phase, or will you navigate to the median and call for the next phase?
That one I'd have to check in on. I would imagine with that zigzag, there may not be sufficient time to make it across in a single phase, but I will check on that one.
It should be a 2-phase crossing.
Okay.
All right. Well, I would like to say that I see that as a degradation in the service of that crossing from a pedestrian standpoint. So I understand the safety aspect of it, but having to wait 2 cycles to get through one crossing is rather inconvenient.
It will be a little less convenient from that standpoint. It is a huge improvement in safety, and also in terms of, as you have these types of staggered crossings, one of the advantages it does is it turns pedestrians to face towards traffic. This is similar to one of the crossings that we have in place now up at Strickland Road in front of the middle school that's up there. So, and that's a 2-stage crossing as well. I understand your point, though, that it's not, we're limiting the ability of people to cross the street all at one time. We are at 6 lanes, so having that ability to have a staggered crossing is seen as an advantage from a safety standpoint.
I would not want to stand in that median.
I'm not looking forward to using this crossing anymore.
Yeah. Is there a way to move that west side crossing closer? I would dart.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that one.
Miss Allie, closer to what exactly?
Just so that I think it's great, the Z crossing where you have to look to go, but it looks like the amount that you have to traverse in the median is 40, 50 feet. It's big.
It's probably about 50 feet. You're probably right.
Yeah, that's long. So if there's a way to shorten that up so that, I mean, ideally you get across in one phase.
The one on Strickland, you get across in one phase, even though there's a Z crossing.
Okay. So part of the complication here has to do also with, we're doing integration of all the transit stops with all of the signalized crossings in the corridor as well. And this one's tricky with respect to where we have a space for the bus shelter infrastructure that's on the Capitol Tower side and where we can do it over on the church side. So it's, I understand your point entirely about it would be advantageous to make this smaller, but we also want to make sure this is coordinated well with the transit access.
For sure. You're going to have to walk that way one way or another. The length will stay the same. I just wouldn't want to walk it in the median. That's a lot of traffic to be sandwiched between. I don't think it'll feel very people friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if we're ripping up all the curbs and everything, when the transit stops get moved, couldn't be a huge anyway. If we're like doing all that curb.
So you were breaking up there a second.
I was just saying, if we are going to be, modifying so much beyond the curb, I'm just curious if the transit stops might be able to be moved to reconcile some of those concerns.
Okay. We can take a look. One of the goals is also to consolidate some of these traffic stops. So transit stuff, sorry.
Ms. Hester.
And for those, just a question about the Z crossing as well. Would bikes be expected to cross there using that?
I don't think so. We've got the next crossing up or down.
Okay. Cool.
It gets used a lot by bicyclists right now, and there's a school that it feeds from. Carroll Middle School's right there.
Yeah.
Did anybody else have any more questions? And I don't see Susan. She's recused. I'm sorry, I forgot myself. So are we looking for a vote on this one too, Mr. Lamb?
Not this time. This is your first look at this project. We just want to get your feedback on this as staff is working on the designs, and I think we'll be back another time when we have the project further along.
Wonderful. Well, my general feedback is that I think that we do damage to the city when we widen streets like this. So we need to be as aggressive as we can with providing for the mitigation that we do with pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on the list, I believe we have the shared street programs from our own Paul Black.
And not much here. I mostly wanted to get the report into the agenda so that all of you had a chance to look at it. I know we had a lot of pressure when the pandemic first hit to do some shared streets. The city was able to move relatively quickly. Didn't maybe do as high a level as folks were looking for, but it's what we had the resources to do. We did 5 streets or 6. I've got to go back and look at one per council district. Around the city. I think it was 5 off the top of my head. I know we did Fiesta Way and Pine View, Morning Dove, drawing a blank on the other 2. It'll come to me later. If you look at the report, the feedback was very mixed. In terms of the actual data, we saw volumes decrease on average about 10% where we deployed the barricades. But in some cases, we actually saw the average speeds rise a little bit. Maybe because there wasn't traffic. We don't know why. So we're stepping back as staff. We're planning to dismantle the current shared streets sometime in early December. In case we do have a snow event, we don't want to clog it up for snow plows. We also think the usage will be a little less over the winter months. We're looking to see if, one, should we redeploy in the spring? And then we're also looking at ways to make the program a little less mixed and a little more positive in terms of the feedback we get. What are things we might do? What are things we can look at in our selection methodology that maybe give us better candidate streets if we decide to proceed? So for now, we're not looking for any direction, but we wanted to put it out there and let you know that we're working on it. If you have any specific ideas about street selection, things we should be incorporating or thinking about, this is a good time for that. I can tell you we've already talked with Parks and Recreation. One of the things we didn't factor in because of the speed with which we had to implement this was where do we have a lack of easily accessible parks, particularly if you don't have a car. So we've already talked to Parks and Rec. They have an analysis that looks at some of that. We also want to think about where are places where people need it. There are places that are maybe showing up in the Parks and Rec inventory, but they might also have lots of homeowner association property and might even have their own private playgrounds. So even though it appears to be a need from a city standpoint, there may not actually be a need. We're trying to figure out what kind of data we use to account for that. We have some things in parcel data and tax data. But again, we're just kind of brainstorming right now to see what are the things that should go into the selection of the new street.
Yes, Ms. Sal?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No.
So thank you so much for approaching this. I think that the biggest feedback that I would have is they do the selection of the streets felt a little funky to me. I mean, I know you guys had a methodology here, and I know you were trying to quickly implement something. That said, I had 3 folks independently that I tried to work with staff to facilitate them getting, they were asking. I had this one woman who really wouldn't leave me alone about it. And these were like city streets that were being used as cut throughs and neighborhoods that maybe might, I don't know, like maybe like if the neighborhoods are asking for it, we should, if it's just throwing down barricades, I guess I struggle to understand what the issue is with doing a quick agile implementation when folks are just asking for a street calming effort. When they're seeing increased usage, maybe due to COVID. Lots of pictures I know with this one woman were submitted. And I think I followed up 3 different times. I got like really generic. I know it wasn't you, Paul, but the gentleman that was helping with it. And I know he was just doing his job, but I got a really generic response indicating that, you know, the city was assessing the feasibility of doing it in different corridors, but I didn't really feel like we were. And I didn't really feel like when it's just putting down a barricade and then kind of walking away. I mean, what kind of, I'm just curious, like what type of upkeep, like on a day-to-day basis, how have we interacted with these shared streets? How have we, after we did our static implementation of them, it doesn't feel like it's been an iterative or, anyway. So I just doesn't feel like a hard lift if people are asking for it versus going out. And it seems like in these neighborhoods, people weren't really feeling too groovy about them anyway. So if people wanted them, why not just move the balls there? So that'd be my feedback.
Paul, I believe you had said that there was some sort of community request that had driven the selection of these. Did I catch that correctly?
Yeah, so because of the speed that we had to implement this, we looked at 2 criteria. One was, has it been petitioned for traffic calming? And then where do those streets also meet up with streets that are designated for neighborhood bikeways in the bike plan? The final criteria, well, I guess there are 2 criteria. We wanted to do geographically equitable distribution. So we said 1 per council district, and then we needed it to be easy to maintain and inexpensive to implement. So streets that had lots and lots of cross streets coming in sort of fell down on the list. If we could do it with 2 or 3 barricades, those rose up to the top. So those were the 4 criteria, and that was it. And again, from a city standpoint, we implemented this at a breakneck pace. And that did come back to bite us. If you look at some of the comments, a lot of the residents were like, what the heck is this? We didn't know about this. And that had to do with the speed that we implemented. So that we knew that was going to happen, but we thought if we go through our normal process, COVID will be over by the time we implement. And we felt like it was more important to do something that was timely, see what works and what doesn't. So we've done the first round, and now we're trying to figure out what worked and what didn't from the comments. What I found, though, was the comments were really all over the place and about equally distributed. So we're also stepping back on the professional side and saying, are there things we can do better? Where did other cities have successful implementations that work really well? A lot of the ones that we're seeing that have been very popular are in cities that don't have a lot of tree cover or green space, that are more of an urban grid that really needed the open spaces. Raleigh being the kind of city that it is, I think particularly in the suburbs, a lot of the negative comments were, why are you doing this? We have plenty of space. And the positive comments were, the greenways are really busy. Thank you for doing this.
It seems to me that this would be the kind of, it touches on something I've been kind of brainstorming on in other areas, is that does the Raleigh Transportation Department have a volunteer program at all?
Not per se. We may have some Adopt a Street. I know I've seen them out there. I don't know if they're ours or somebody else's. Eric might be able to answer that. Yeah, okay. And then we have frowned from a liability standpoint on having volunteers work in the street. You'll know one of the few exceptions was the pop-up we did on Harrington Street a few years back. But it required us going out and having city staff put the cones out first. And then once the cones were out, we were comfortable with volunteers working behind them as a barricade, so to speak. But that's been
yeah, that's a consideration for sure. But it seems like this is the kind of thing that where the more buy-in you have from the folks on the ground, like the person that's going to drag it back to where it's supposed to be after his like grumpy neighbor moves it out of the way, or the somebody that's there to explain to them what this is, you know, and have a familiar face, that perhaps one of your criteria would be somebody willing to, like, if not, yeah, I won't move it. I understand it's a traffic control device, but I'm going to call the city if I see it moved, and like I can be the contact. But yeah, spinning up a whole new program for the transportation department is a big ask too. So community buy-in is hard.
So if there's nobody else, I just had one other quick amendment is I know Durham did land up implementing something similar. So maybe you could just connect with Dale or somebody over there and just hear how it went for them. I think it took them a little bit longer to get it on the ground, and I'm not sure how it was received, but they're pretty like-minded and similar community. And so they might have faced similar obstacles, and it might be good just to mesh brains real quick. Thank you for doing this. I know it was left.
Is this in all related to the discussion around the like dine out downtown? Has anybody attended to that or seen the pictures from that the past few weeks? That's been really sweet too, and that's a lot like an open street. Does this have any overlap as far as policy or planning, implementation? Are any of the same folks involved?
To some degree. Now, again, this was from the back end. This was a huge lift. I mean, we had the shared streets. In terms of common players, a lot of the same people. You've got to get things like trash and fire. I mean, all of those folks have to be at the table, because when we close the street, all of those curbside services get affected. Mail, again, the same things we run into on bike lanes. So, you know, making this move, you know, the fire and trash folks are like, how are we going to get around the barricades? Working out how big the barricades could be and how they're replaced. Much more complicated than it looks. Everybody just saw us put a barricade out there, some explanational signage that our communication staff put together on sort of a minute's notice. Just ended up being a huge undertaking. You wouldn't know it. And I think it speaks a lot to the staff that we ended up working with. Again, there were probably 12 departments in the first meeting to get this off the ground. And streeteries are in the same thing. I think the one advantage they have is most of them are in downtown, and they've got additional resources with the downtown district and Jen Baker and her folks, plus VRA. So they have a little more firepower they can bring to bear to make these things happen.
It takes more firepower to shut down a street like Glenwood, though. And we haven't given you enough love on this. I was delighted when I was out riding around and found my first shared street, and I appreciated the intention and the fact that it's agile and we can learn from it and move on and do something better next time. I think this is exactly the kind of thing that I'd love to see. So I'd love to see more of it. Please let me know how we can help.
Well, thank you.
All right, is that it for the shared streets? Does anybody else have any other comments? Anything else you need from us, Paul? Great. All right, I think that does it for the presentations. We will be moving on to the reports. And first we have the chair's reports, and this time I wrote stuff down so that I wouldn't sound stupid. The first thing is a very important item that we missed last week. Mr. Lamb will perhaps help me on this. We would like to recognize the former chair of the BPAC, and perhaps she has her award with her that has been put together. I had heard that it had been sent, but Mary Sell has been sent a plaque, and we would like to virtually present it to Mary Sell. And you can pretend that you can see it now.
I got
and
it.
it's very pretty.
Thank you so much. Love you all.
And I want to thank you for your work last year, and the North-South Greenway achievement in particular was phenomenal and seminal, and is owed in large part to you. So thank you very much.
Don't know about all that, but thanks, y'all.
All right. So on to the business that we've been attending to. Vice Chair Alley and I met with the chair and the vice chair of the Greenway and the Parks and Recreation and Greenway Advisory Board, and we are beginning to refresh our relationship in response to the request from council. To remind everybody, we had 2 items added to our work plan by the council. One was to review the Greenway master plan, which will be coming to us in the next month or two, next few months it should be, I believe. And the other one was to collaborate with the Greenway and Parks Advisory Board about Greenway safety issues. And that all happened right after that unfortunate murder, the tragic murder on the Walnut Creek Trail. But it was also spurred by a lot of the comments we've been getting that have accelerated over the COVID situation with conflicts on the Greenway Trail just between mostly cyclists and walkers on the trail. Some of the counselors have been getting a lot of complaints from their constituents about bicycles not yelling out, bicycles without bells, people with big dog leashes trying to clothesline bicyclists, and asking us to collaborate on solutions. And so our discussion centered around, like, what does that mean? What are, staff has started a conversation about this, so we will listen in to what they do. We will appoint a liaison to the Greenway and Advisory Board. And so tonight I would like to ask if you would like to reach out after the meeting sometime. We're going to be looking for a volunteer to attend their meetings as a liaison, and we'll probably fit them in with their Greenway Board's subcommission. Nick, this would fit most naturally under your committee, but your committee has been taking a lot of work on lately, so I'll leave that up to you if you guys want to claim it. But if not, we'll open up to the wider group, and I'll follow up with you on that individually unless you have immediate thoughts. Okay, good. All right. Did I miss anything, Elizabeth? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Parrish.
I'm sorry. I just can't find where that raised hand symbol is. Forgive me. When did that murder take place?
I think that it was around May, the beginning of the summer. Does anybody else remember offhand? I apologize. I don't know the details.
Oh.
It's been a few months.
Yeah, that was around the time that, as I recall, Elizabeth and I met with that Greenway committee. Because we made some safety recommendations. It may have happened just after that murder. That's very unfortunate. So I'm glad we made the recommendations we did. I think we even recommended more plain clothesmen, police officers to go from time to time in those areas, as I recall. So
that's great. There's a bunch of measures that they're considering. Oaks and Spokes has come up with a list as well, I believe.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So we will be continuing that conversation, and we are going to encourage our Greenway Board liaison to be attending our meetings. So I will be reaching out to, I believe it's Brad, former BPAC member Nate Humphrey's partner. So we will hope to see him on some of our future meetings, and we'll be able to stay in closer contact, and we'll reassess that situation after a couple months to see if we're getting the kind of collaboration that we want on those issues. We met with Councilman Melton for our monthly check-in, and basically we had a very simple meeting this time, informed him what we have been discussing, and told him the issues that were going to be coming up on this agenda. It was a pretty uneventful meeting, unless Elizabeth has notes that I didn't write down. Doesn't look like it. Okay. I have been attending the outreach policy meetings and the planning committee meetings. I'm sorry, the outreach committee and the policy committee. I believe planning got canceled this time around. And both of the committees look to be really busy and very energized, and it makes me very excited. So thank you guys for your work. Look forward to attending the next set of meetings. One thing that I would like to request for future meetings for the committee and for the commission is if the commissioners could start trying to attend the meeting 15 minutes early, so that we can avoid any issues with wondering if there's going to be a quorum and technical issues to make sure that the meeting is up and running ahead of time. So if we're going to make that request in the future emails and communications. And the one last thing that I have is that it looks like the UDO street section recommendations that we worked on in the last year, about a year ago, will be moving forward to council soon, and look forward to seeing that get resolved. So that is it for the chair report, and we will move on to the committee reports, and Elizabeth is at the top of the screen, so we'll get the policy committee to go first, please.
Thanks, Dwight. We had a great policy meeting last week. We had several staff members attend. The first half of our meeting was spent with Jed Niffenegger, who is, I'm going to forget his title, but he does a lot of the signs and signals and markings in the city, and he gave us a really informative presentation about intersection design, namely around crosswalks. So he's going to come back. I would imagine we have a lot to learn from him about what the city's doing and what their standards are when they use certain types of crosswalks, how they liaise with NCDOT, et cetera. So I thought that was a really informative the first half of the meeting. And then the second half of the meeting, we talked with Jason and Donetta, who had come to the full commission last month about the sidewalk petition process, which is currently under a one-year moratorium because they have about 5 years worth of backlog projects. And we were discussing ways to make that project, program more equitable and impactful, encouraging looking at some metrics that we could use in the process, whether that is to rank projects once we get petitions, or even to go out and more proactively seek petitions. So what I would suggest coming out of that conversation is kind of a two-step review. The first would be a motion to support the ranking metrics that they shared with us last month for projects that are already in the queue. So before the 12-month moratorium took effect, there's, I don't know how many projects, but several years worth. And they need, instead of doing first come, first serve, they would build all of the projects, but rank them in terms of priority based on 4 metrics that we saw last month. So demand generators, sidewalk connectivity, safety and need, which includes an equity index based on a Wake County metric, and then funding considerations. So what I would suggest is that projects in the hopper proceed using those prioritizations, and that we ask staff to come back to us before the moratorium expires to talk about ways that we could take that notion to the next level and be kind of more proactive moving forward. So if that's appropriate, Dwight, does that stand as my motion?
Well,
yes, Eric.
If I can just ask a clarifying question, one of the things we talked about was what the break point is for those projects that are already in the pipeline. And to be clear, if the projects that are already in production, already started surveying work, already started design work, if those stay on track, and then just the ones behind that are the ones that are subject to the new prioritization process. Is that your intention?
I think that makes good sense.
Okay.
So that's my motion.
Second. So it has been moved and seconded to, we're going to keep the current support rankings for, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, provide the specific wording for me again. I can read your email too.
I guess you could say that we're going to support staff's recommendation for the prioritizing of projects that are already in the queue, and ask staff to come back to us within the next 6 months to discuss next steps for the program.
But that, I guess I already seconded it, as long as that's clear enough for staff and that Eric, Mr. Lamb can work with that.
Yeah.
And Paul. All right, well, it's seconded. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand near the camera.
All favor.
Thank you. Mr. Parrish, we can see you now too. And you can, all opposed? There's none opposed. That will be another unanimous approval by the VPAC this evening. Thank you very much. Is that it for your committee report?
That's it.
Great. Moving on down, I am coming to Mr. Neptune. Do you have the outreach committee report?
Yes, and I would just say in brief that the majority of our last outreach meeting We discussed a walkability assessment or report that we had received, I think earlier this year, but we had just sort of recently gotten a hold of it courtesy city staff, specifically I think B person was able to acquire it for us. And, there was a lively conversation around utilizing the report and its recommendations as a means of engaging. Just as we head into 2021. So I think, and Susan, if she's still with us, can speak to this a bit more, but I think what we're seeking to do is maybe have staff share, their takeaways from the report and maybe their recommendations as to what we could really push on in terms of working with the city and working with the public and making improvements on, our walkability and pedestrian infrastructure in the city. But that was sort of a pretty significant topic of conversation at our last meeting. Other than that, I'd like to commend Mary Sell, fellow commissioner, on her work with the North-South Connector of the Fall Challenge. I think it's a great, form of public engagement and partnership in a time of COVID-19. And I am looking forward to participating in the challenge this week. So just, I wanted to kind of put that out there that it's actively taking place this week. The challenge, of course, all the information is available online, and I'm sure if Ms. Saul wants to share more, she certainly could. But I think those are the two big items. And I guess also next month, we're anticipating getting an update on the Greenway Master Plan. Most likely the entire commission should be getting an update, but I think between now and then, I'll be checking in with the Greenway folks and the design team to see if we're still on track for that. So those are probably the big updates from the outreach and engagement. Thank you.
And just, I can confirm that we are going to get an update on the Greenway Master Plan next month.
Oh.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Neptune. I was happy to attend your meeting last week, I suppose it was, and I played my role as the resident grumpy skeptic, and I had to be convinced that going over the bike walk friendly report, I was like, if they want to know what's in the report, just tell them to read the report. But you guys had really good points about how you're going to use this for engagement and how this can help direct our work, and I was won over. So thank you very much.
I have a question for Mr. Neptune. I came in on the tail end of your report last meeting. I was having problems with getting in. Did you say something about an event to walk on sidewalks? And if you did, has that taken place, or when will that take place?
I'm not sure, Mr. Parrish, what you might be referring to. Could somebody? I don't personally recall speaking to any event with regard to walking the sidewalks or anything.
Okay.
Well, I think Paul referenced the walking audit.
Say that again. Who was?
I think Paul referenced a walking audit.
That's walk audit, yeah.
Referring to.
Okay. Oh, a walking audit. Okay. All right. And then, did you say something about an event related to African Americans in Dix Park?
I did not speak to that.
You did not. Okay.
No. Does anybody recall what Mr. Parrish is referring to?
I've not heard of that.
Oh, okay.
Good idea.
Okay, well, yeah, because it seems like I heard something about encouraging more African Americans to engage in some of the events at Dix Park, maybe to encourage more African Americans to take advantage of the park system in general. I thought I heard something.
If you, perhaps I can jump in. I apologize. There's a EDGE study that's going on in conjunction with Dix Park, which is going to look at how Dix Park interfaces with the neighborhood. And I'm not sure if it's part of that effort, but there's also an effort going on that Parks is looking at how to connect Chavis Park to Dix Park. and looking at connections between those two neighborhoods. And that's one of the major themes of that idea, or that push, is to like bring those communities together and give them access to Dix Park.
Yeah, and if I could, Chairman Otwell, I would just say that as a member of the Dix Park Community Committee, I know that there is certainly an active effort to very deliberately plan and program and activate Dix Park in a fashion that encourages its use by all communities across the city and across the region, and certainly specifically African Americans. So, if not specifically from BPAC, in terms of where you may have heard of programming geared toward African Americans, I know that it's certainly an active conversation within the Dix Park, internally within with respect to all the various stakeholders involved in the planning and implementation there. And so, I think as a commission, we're certainly, interested in promoting and encouraging, that activity. Sure.
Okay, that answers my question. I was actually in one of their work groups, Mr. Neptune, at one time, and this is something that I can reestablish connection with them, and I'll follow up with somebody, more about that report with Chambers Heights, so I can get a better understanding of this project. But this is what happens when you when your computer programming tunes in and out. You just get parts of conversation. But that's very helpful, what you just said. Thanks.
All right, and I believe last we have Mr. Tong and the Planning Committee.
Yeah, we actually had a meeting before this meeting at the regular scheduled time. We had a pretty short agenda, but we had Sarah Sanford from the East Coast Greenway come and talk to us about some of the missing gaps in the area, such as Gorman Street, Little John Road, and the section that goes through downtown Raleigh. So she wants some feedback about potential routes through downtown Raleigh and then around a temporary detour at the intersection of Hargett and West right now. So that's all I have for this month.
Well, I apologize, Mr. Tong. I don't know how I got the impression that your meeting was canceled. I misspoke earlier. That's great to hear about the East Coast Greenway. All right, I believe that does it for the committee reports, and we can move on to staff reports. Mr. Lamb, do you have any staff reports this evening?
You actually stole my thunder on a couple of items, but yes, we are moving forward with the cross sections for the BPAC's recommendations for incorporating bike facilities behind the curbs. So we are asking the City Council for permission to initiate that text change. So we're moving that forward, along with a package of some other street cross sections that we're looking at making modifications for future BRT corridors. Will be a part of the package. The process for that, if the City Council authorizes the change, that would go through a review with the Planning Commission first, who then makes a recommendation to the City Council, and then they hold a public hearing on that. So that's moving forward. It's also good that you brought up the city's efforts to connect Dorothea Dix with downtown and with Chavis. We are actually very excited that we were the recipients of a grant in conjunction with working with AARP, and they're going to help to bring in 880 Cities, which is a nonprofit urban planning firm, and they are champions for open space and good park planning, and have good experience with these types of street retrofits. And so the key strategy right now is we're looking at either the South or Lenora corridor as the means of connecting from downtown in both directions. And so they're going to be coming in to help us out with that effort. And we're very, very excited to have that firepower behind us. I think that's all I have. I'll defer to Paul if he's anything else. From Barbara.
I just have two quick things. We successfully managed to have a quarantined version of the League Certified Instructor Seminar, and the city will soon have 3 licensed instructors as part of staff. I took it. B. Person took it, and Fontaine Burris. And a shout out to B, who managed to make this happen in spite of multiple obstacles. It was really quite an achievement just to pull it off. And we were the first class to be done under COVID as a virtual class. It was a lot of fun. I met some really great people too who were not from the city itself. The other thing is I'll be presenting with a former city employee who's now in the private sector at the Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit later this week about our Downtown Connector project and specifically about the outreach portions of it. So if you're interested, you can probably still sign up. I'll hold this up to the camera. But it's the Metropolitan Planning Organization out of Tampa is the host this year, but it covers a bunch of parts of Florida and Alabama, Mississippi, and I think even into Louisiana. And I'm not actually going. I'll be doing it from here. No beach for me. And that's all I have.
Thank you guys for getting certified. That'll be a wonderful resource for the city to be able to provide. And good luck at your presentation. I'm sorry that you don't get to go to Tampa, but it'll be okay. Carrie's good. All right, I believe, unless Ms. Godwin, do you have anything today?
Nothing for me tonight.
Wonderful. I believe that covers us for reports, and then we will move on to board comments and announcements, and start with general board comments. And I'm going to go first because I'm the chair and I get to. I was hoping that I could get Mr. Lamb, if you could send the request on to the right department to have somebody take a look at the temporary situations on Lassiter Mill and Anderson Drive with the bridges across Crabtree Creek. The sidewalks are obstructed and partially closed, and there seems to be some incomplete signage. It would be wonderful to get the sidewalks clear because the Greenway trails are really close to there, but if that's not possible, I think that it needs to have some attention to the closure signage.
And that's with the work zones on both Lassiter Mill and Anderson, correct?
Correct. They're redoing those bridges, and they're closing one bridge at a time. They have temporary lights set up and everything. And then that was it for me. Thank you. And I think I saw Mr. Neptune's hand first, but there was a few.
Just a quick question for Ms. Godwin. I just was wondering if you happen to know if there was like a widespread issue with the Citrix bikes today. I had tried to pull a number of e-bikes, and I would just say between 5 to 10 of these bikes, they weren't moving as they should. None of them were moving as designed in terms of like with the e-assist. And so it just seemed curious to me that so many would be sort of out. I didn't know if there was an outage or some sort of widespread issue there.
Yeah, so I received an update from our bike share vendors director of operations this morning, and some of the bikes are going through a firmware update, but the update didn't take automatically to a large number of the bikes. So our operations and maintenance team was out there doing it manually today, but it should look better by midweek into the week.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. It's unfortunate that that update would occur the same week we're promoting the use of the north-south connector. I'm just truly just sharing that comment as it's just an unfortunate timing. But that's how technology goes. So I get it. Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Sell.
I didn't think you were going to call me next because you said there was your hands up. So just real quick, do you think maybe we could communicate that in like the social channels, Barbara? I know that you're not I know that there's somebody else at Citrix Cycle, but if they haven't yet, I haven't seen anything come across letting people know, because I had somebody mention that today too that was participating, that they had to swap out their bike. Something funky was going on. So everybody's like already mentioned it, but I did want to just reiterate that there's a fun little challenge going on this week where we're trying to get folks out participating and introducing them to the new separated bike facilities that we have downtown, while also promoting local businesses. So the intention is each day, Oaks and Spokes is taking this on, and the intention is that each day a different business is promoted and folks go there and like tag the business. There's directions on Oaks and Spokes website, and people can contact me as well if they have any questions, but I would just encourage people to go to Oaks and Spokes social accounts because they will be having real-time information and providing directions each day. But we're looking to get as robust of participation as possible given that it's COVID, and helping people to get out there in a safe way that's socially distanced while still promoting this wonderful new bike facility that people are very excited about. I've had a few people ask me if there's going to be like a ride to commemorate it, and I've kind of said maybe in the spring, but maybe in the spring we could do that. Maybe in the spring we'll have it down to Peace Street, Paul. It'd be really cool because this is phase one of an intended corridor. So just wanted to say that really quick. And then the other thing is that Oaks and Spokes this weekend will be hosting Cranksgiving, which is an event that is also up on their website, but you can drop off. I'm going to share it in the chat, the location where people can drop it off in. Well, I guess I don't know it right offhand, so I have to look it up, but I want to tell people where they can drop off canned food. Normally it would be an event that was more, participatory, but again, to promote social distancing, there's just a drop-off site. But people can go to Oaks and Spokes social channels or their website to get more information, but you go down to the next person, I'll pull up the address real quick.
Drop-offs at Raleigh Rescue Mission.
All right, I believe that there were more hands before. Vice Chair Alley.
I just wanted to take a moment and congratulate Susan Hatchell, who was awarded this week the American Society of Landscape Architects Presidential Medal, which, Susan, you can correct me, is the highest award for landscape architects in the country. So we're so grateful to have you in Raleigh and on this commission. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I just got the ribbon for it today, actually. So there you have it. But it is one of the highest awards. It is. There are design awards that are higher and things like that. But it is only given to one person a year. It's a very wonderful honor. It was, and in COVID, the whole conference is happening right now, and it was a. It's supposed to be a surprise anyway, even when we have a real conference. But on a virtual conference, it made it more difficult. And my husband had to get in on it, and there was a cooler with a huge medal in the backyard, and and the minute I decide I have to go, I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk around the yard, and my husband's like, oh. So it was really fun. It was a wonderful honor, and it was a great deal of fun that it was a virtual surprise. Thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing it up.
All right, were there any more comments? Ms. Hatchell, did you just raise your hand?
I did have a couple of things that I want to say, and I wasn't even going to tell you that I won a medal. I'll wear it for you next time. How about that? We did have a community-wide climate change meeting. I think I've kind of told you guys about it a few times, and we were working on the transportation matrix, which we did pretty well. We got through a lot of it, but that's an ongoing process. I also attended Bike Walk North Carolina, which is a 2-day event last week. I know that Paul was there part of the time. I don't know if anybody else participated, but it was a really good conference virtually, of course. Talked a lot about DEI, talked a lot about slow streets, and talked a lot about e-bikes. And Raleigh Citrix was mentioned quite a bit in terms of e-bikes. And then I also attended virtually the NCDOT Integrated Mobility Division's Bicycle and Pedestrian Explosion in COVID. I don't know if anybody attended that, but it was the ITRI folks and others talking about the statistics of what has happened with bicycling during this, whole pandemic thing. And it was really interesting because around the universities, in the region, the commuting bicycling is way down actually. So it was kind of they were saying like the numbers are up, but in places where we know we have students and commuters, they're down. But anyway, all those events were great, and I think that was it. Thanks.
Great. Last chance. Anybody else? Well, we'll move on then to the upcoming events, and we keep talking about all the events that I wrote down ahead of time, so I don't have any more events left. I'll just mention again the North-South Appreciation event and Cranksgiving were on my list. Are there any other events that anybody would like to get on the public record? All right. Then we have our confirming our next BPAC meeting. I don't think the date that I see here on this agenda is correct because I think our next meeting is in December. Does anybody have the date in front of him?
If I forgot to update that, I apologize.
It's okay. I didn't update it either. But we will be the third.
December 21st.
So our next meeting will be at 6 o'clock on December 21st, 2020. Ms. Woodall, you have your hand up? Oh, okay. All right. Back to the agenda. We've had confirmed the next meeting. I believe that's it. Unless there's any other business anybody wants to bring up, we can adjourn this meeting, and I will talk to everybody later. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good evening.
Bye, everybody. Great to see you.
Thanks, y'all.
See you guys.
Bye.